Raise your horns high and let your spirit flow. It's the classic metal wrap-up show. Feel the rush, let the loudness grow. It's the classic metal wrap-up show.
All right. Well, we got, a few weeks back. What was it? Like a few months maybe now back, right? Is when we got Kendall on board to do the Don Dokken versus Lynch Mob, Wicked Sensation album, back-to-back challenge. So this time around, we have special guest. I don't know if you want to introduce him, Evil, because I think it is between you and Andrew. I think it was you that contacted him, and I've always been a fan of his calls when he calls his CMS. I mean, he's really passionate about his stance and where he's at as far as why he feels the way he feels regarding certain artists. I think he's definitely a Kiss fan, definitely a Motley fan, and I think also a Guns N' Roses fan. But I don't know if you want to do the honors of introducing the guy. He's all the way from Australia, where they have what is it? Foster's is Australian for beer, I think, right?
I don't even know if Foster's exists anymore. I certainly haven't seen it around in decades.
But
introduce
yes,
the
ladies
man
and gentlemen,
there, Evil.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, for the Classic Metal Wrap-Up Show, a CMS legend, in my opinion, because he was always offering takes that neither Neely or Aiken ever really joined up on, and some of them I appreciated because I agreed with Tim James. So here he is, the legend Tim James, all the way from Australia. And thank you for being here. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, I think, over there. So that's bright and early for you. Breakfast with a couple of knuckleheads. That's the way to start your day, my friend.
Well, I've got my coffee here, so.
Oh, there you go. We won't.
So, Andrew, why don't you tell them what we're doing today?
So, to my knowledge, we are doing album versus album, Motley Crue 94 versus, was it Dr. Feelgood that we decided on?
Right, Dr. Feelgood versus 94.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Two Motley classics head to head.
Right.
And we thought no one better to answer the questions that we would all have and to get some opinions, because he has strong feelings about this subject, than Tim James.
Right.
Well, I'm just going to say from the outset, and I've said this to you guys,
mm-hmm.
I am completely and unapologetically, and not because I'm trying to be controversial or not because I'm trying to get attention or anything like that, right? I just really passionately love this band. Motley Crue is the only band that I can honestly sit here and say that I honestly love everything they've ever done. Like, everything. They're the only band that I can honestly say I love every song. I can't say that about any other band in the history of my life.
That's pretty rare ground there, because I don't know if there's a single band I could think of that I would say every single song.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, but I am a big Crue fan, and I've seen them over half. I think we all are, every single one of us in this chat. So that's
how many times have you seen them there, Evil? I mean, I think
over half a dozen, maybe
same here,
between 6 and 8 times.
I think, yeah. I've been like 13 with the last being December 15 when they played at the Moda Center with Alice Cooper, who blew them off stage.
And there are very few bands that Evil is going to go see multiple times. So that tells you, as we all know, that seeing them the kind of show the Crue puts on. So,
right.
Like, I haven't seen them as much as probably you guys have. I've seen them 7 times. They've only been to Sydney 7 times. And, all of the tours that I'm so envious of you guys, because I don't know if you guys saw for example, the 94 tour. Like, for us, they came here on Feelgood. Thank God my dad took me to that when I was 15. And then they didn't come back here until 2005. Now, they did try to come here for New Tattoo, and I had a mentoring. For those of you that may not know, I'm a professional musician. That's what I do. I had a coaching and mentoring relationship with their management for a couple of years, and they were going to come here in 2000 for New Tattoo, and I had tickets to 3 or 4 shows. I had backstage passes, the whole deal. Their manager said to me that myself and the guy that runs their Australian website, Chronological Crew, do you guys know who Paul Miles is?
No,
I
I
don't.
He
don't.
he wrote John Corabi's book.
Right. Right.
So but their management said that myself and him were the 2 biggest supporters of Motley Crue in Australia. So, but yeah, they cancelled that tour due to lack of interest. So, anyway, I did still meet them in 2013, but I got paid $1,000 to do that. Don't regret it.
Mm.
Not at all.
Nice.
Right on.
Well, how do
And was
we-
that is that your personal crew highlight for you there, TJ? Meeting them in person?
Yeah, damn straight.
Nice.
And I got very lucky too, right? Because they did two. This is when they were touring. They toured Australia with Kiss.
Oh yeah.
So Kiss were touring for Monster,
Mhm.
and they toured Australia with Kiss. And Motley Crue had the Sex single out at the time, the current single, and the night after they played 2 shows in Sydney, the night after I met them, they did play the second night, but Vince Neil was rushed to hospital after the first gig with kidney stones. So they actually played an abbreviated set the second night, and Vince Neil didn't do that meet and greet. And then after that Australian tour, Tommy was going through this thing of, if any of you guys remember this, I don't want to do meet and greets. I think
Yeah.
they're rip off,
Yeah.
blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
So he then wasn't doing them. So the night that I got in may well have been the last night where we met the whole band.
Nice.
Wow. That's cool.
So that was
Good
pretty
timing. Yeah, fortuitous timing there.
Yes.
What about you Evil Motley Crue highlight before we get either concert or if you ever got the chance to meet any of the guys or
I
anything?
never I never really attempted to meet them, but mostly every time I saw them it was on a multi-band bill, and I don't know. I'm not the kind of person that goes out of my way to do that unless it was like, easy and accessible. Some of the, like I told you guys before, between Ruben and Andrew, me and Quiet Riot and some of these other bands was easier because they were lower on the totem pole and they'd be at the
Right.
merch booth signing anything they could in the early 90s or late 90s to get people to buy stuff. But probably for Crew, like I said, I saw them at Canocti one time in the rain, and I was wondering if the show was going to be canceled, but it didn't get canceled. The crowd was thinned, but that allowed me to be directly up front because it was a general admission on the floor there, and Crew just went ape shit anyways, despite the weather, and that was pretty cool. But I will say I felt the strongest show, which is the weirdest to me because it's the tour that I didn't think as much of because I didn't really care for Generation Swine. There's only a couple songs on the album that I like, but the tour came to, I told you guys, Memorial Auditorium in Sacramento, which is only, I think, 3,800 people. And Motley Crue had previously always played the arena or the amphitheaters in the area, and they came in kind of pissed off and hungry. It just felt like that right from the get-go. and they blew the roof off that place. And it was up close and personal, loud. They put the sound system like they were in the arena, even though they were in the auditorium. And it was the best show I ever saw. I think because again, Vince had something. It was early on in the Swine tour, and I think he had something to prove that he was back and he was hungry too. He was slim and trim and actually sang 70 to 80% of the words, which was always good for Vince. And yeah, that was the show where I just went, holy shit, they really came to kick some people's ass and make us remember that they are Motley Crue and they deserve to be back over there at the arena, not over here at the auditorium. I think they took it personal.
What I was going to ask you about that was that because with that tour they did, I don't know, maybe half a dozen, 8 shows before the album came out, and they did these listening party things, right? Where they played the album in its entirety, and then they played a bunch of hits at the end. Or was that the arena tour that started in October of '97, which was where Cheap Trick were opening up?
There was no opener. If it was an opener, it was a local band or something, but I don't believe there was any opener.
So
It was the one where Tommy was doing the magic trick. Do you know what that one is?
Yeah.
With the
Yeah, yeah,
astronaut or whatever.
Or
yeah.
and the drums go up wrapped in a thing, and you can see him in there drumming, and then all of a sudden he takes the thing off, and he's the one actually using the light on his drums at the back of the auditorium when he was supposed to be up there.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was again that wasn't something they normally did. It could have been one of those early shows. They did play a lot of Swine, but they also gave us like 6 hits right at the end of Shout at the Devil and all the other stuff you wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because I know, well, if they didn't do your show, Cheap Trick did the majority of the arena tour, because that arena tour only lasted 2 months, and then they, early in '98 got off Elektra and got all their masters back and yada yada yada, and yeah.
I've seen Cheap Trick before, and I would remember if Cheap Trick was on the bill. It wasn't. It was. I want to say, if it was one, I want to say it was some '90s band that was like. So I get mixed up because around that same time in that era, 96, 97 was the Kiss reunion tour, and one of those had Stabbing Westward opening for them in Sacramento.
Yeah, that's who we got.
I didn't like Stabbing Westward. You give me bands like that, I just check out. I go to the beer line and come back when the Kiss starts or Motley starts. So it might have been a band kind of like that, but whoever it was, I was not interested enough to even pay attention. I remember the tickets were. Again, because it was kind of an odd time for Motley. Even though they had just got Vince back and that was announced, it was still kind of overshadowed by all the other stuff in society at the time. The rap was going on, the East-West rap battles. I'm in Northern California where that's a popular thing. Rock was not so popular at that time. If it was alternative and grungy. But I just remember thinking that the radio station had some deal. And I was like, wow, the Crew tickets are that cheap? I'm going to go grab 2 Crew tickets. I got a date, took her over there. She had never even thought of Motley Crue before, and then she went in there and realized, wow, these guys really put on a hell of a show. I said, yeah, you're getting an arena level show inside this little auditorium. So
there must be something there must be something wrong with me, and I'm not being funny, but I don't know what's wrong with me that I really sincerely love that record and everybody hates it. Everybody universally hates Generation Swine. And
I don't hate it. I would say that it has 3 or 4 songs I'm okay with. I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to play them, but when they played them live, I didn't complain. And then there was a lot of filler, but we'll get to that later. I think sometimes Motley does throw in a song or two for me that is filler that I just, it's not the worst. It's Motley Crue, so I can still listen to it, but it's not their best. And usually I try to skip a couple of those, but yeah.
Very melodic record.
Yes. And
very melodic record.
Yeah, and I just think if people really looked at the show that they put on at the time, it was actually pretty awesome. Right. To be quite frank,
I've got the best quality audio of that show, and I've got the best quality bootlegs. I don't like shaky camera bootlegs.
To be honest, that's not even the smallest venue I saw them in. I think if we Google up the Warfield, it's smaller
Oh,
than Sacramento
and
Memorial.
well,
Yeah, they
they play.
played the Warfield in '94.
Well, they
I know.
performed
I've got
at the
the front.
Roseland Theater, and that's like 4K, under 4K.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
it's like 3,500, and that was on the
yeah,
Greatest
and
Hits tour, and that was a
Yeah,
highlight. I
that's
thought that
true.
was one
They
of
were
the
doing
best
smaller
shows.
venues too. Yeah.
that might have been, yeah. And they, but I saw them at the Warfield, so I was actually even closer to them at the Warfield. But I felt like they didn't do the magic trick or all the extra stuff. The Warfield can't handle all the all of this stuff on the stage, so they had to keep it down to a club level size type of thing. So I think Warfield's only 2,000 seats, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yeah.
but again, I guess like sometimes what they would do is, and this is where I'm fortunate being in NorCal, is sometimes they wanted to test stuff. So an early date of a run of shows might be in San Francisco or Oakland or Sacramento to make sure that they had shit working while they're not too far away from home before they go off to Reno or Colorado or wherever they're heading. And so sometimes you would get them, oh, we're going to hit the Warfield and play here, but by next week or 2 weeks from now, we're in the arenas doing this. So,
Right.
I've got a whole heap of I'm wearing actually a bootleg shirt today, the '94 bootleg shirt with because I bought the t-shirts back in the day. They sold them through a local shop here in Sydney, and of course they're all ancient and old and worn. So there are some sites out there where you can get reproduction tees that are great.
Nice.
So I got all these shirts again, and I'm like, yay! So yeah,
What?
well,
yeah,
I'm
but
always one of those person who would buy a legit shirt from the table for the band so they get some dough, and then I'll find
Mhm.
the guy in the
I do
parking
that.
lot
I
with
do
some of the
that
odd
too.
knockoffs and grab a couple of those too, just on the way out the door, just so I
Yeah,
have
Right.
more shirts.
I do that. I do that too. Believe me, I've bought heaps of official shirts, but these are shirts that
Yeah,
you can't get on Motley. I mean, you're not going to get 1994
yeah,
tour shirt on
Right.
a Motley.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So how do you feel, Andrew? You're pretty quiet over there. Give us your take on some of this Motley talk.
Well, I've only ever seen them one time, and it was back in
oh
23.
yeah.
So I don't really have too much to
Uh-oh.
contribute to that.
And was that
I
on the
guess-
stadium tour?
Yeah. At
And
John
was that-
5, so it was the second leg. So
John 5.5, but
yeah.
well, so I'm gonna blow through my list quick because I don't want to take too much time. I would say On Fire for me the best show was the Greatest Hits tour, just because they were at that point, they were hitting the clubs and they were really hungry. None of the gimmicky bullshit, none of that.
What year did that come out?
90,
98.
98, yeah, 98.
98. Okay.
The other thing that was, and this
Because
is
that might have been when they did Warfield, by the way. Go
yeah,
ahead.
it was. I think that's probably about right,
Yeah.
because that came shortly after after Swine tanked. One of the over the years, I've gotten folks that I know known as publicists for these bands, and I remember I got an email about catching the Rolling Stones at the Moda. At the time, it was Rose Garden. Yeah, the Rose Garden's what it was referred. And I'm like, I don't know. It's on. I think it was like on a Wednesday, and it says Motley Crue's opening up, and I was like, holy shit. Well, I guess I'm going, and so
That gave
they
me-
actually
that
did
gave
two
me-
shows. They did Portland, they did Seattle opening up for the Rolling Stones. That was another great one because it was condensed set, like 50 minutes. They banged out the hits. That was a close second to the 98 Greatest Hits. The other one that stands out to me is the Girls Tour. They were co-headline. Well, no, I think Whitesnake was supporting because they were just coming out with the '87 record, and they had Girls, Girls, Girls. The Portland show was the show prior to the Tacoma show, which now been bootlegged and never officially released, and I think it's cut out like the last 3-4 songs or whatever. So that was good. Saw him on the New Tattoo with Samantha Maloney. Again, caught that at I think that would have been White River Amphitheater. Maximum Rock Tour 1 was great.
That was the second Maximum Rock tour, yeah.
And the Maximum Rock was great because I had Randy Castillo, and at that point they were doing that with Scorpions. On the Scorpions,
there was two. There was the
Yeah,
first one, and then they did another Maximum Rock
with
tour
Megadeth and Anthrax.
in
Yeah.
India too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So caught those, but the first one was better, I thought, because it was bands that fit uh in the fit the bill better. Scorpions and Motley, great. That was right. The Portland show was right before. I don't. You have to look them up. Flash Bastard. They were a band that were on the Americoma label, and that night was the last night. I think might have been the first or second night that Flash Bastard was on the bill. They got thrown off because I think the singer said something offensive to Klaus from Scorpions, and they threw him off the tour.
Yep.
Great show. And then did get the chance to meet Vince and Nikki, and this was another weird one where I knew somebody that was working. What was that fucking fishing show that's on like one of those reality shows? Well, it'll come to me. But anyways, one of the guys was going to be in Seattle, and I guess they had like an extra pass to meet Motley. At that point, it was just Vince and Nikki meeting people. So I managed to get a couple of those crappy rock star cards signed. So I had all four, but I only got two signed. I only got Nikki and Vince signed. So that's my Motley shit. But again, 98 hits tour was probably, to me, the best, I think, because it was no gimmicks. They were stripped down. It was hitting the clubs again.
They were touring. They did massive amounts of touring in 98, 99, 2000 in particular, because they were bringing out their remastered back catalogue with
the Crucial Crew stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The greatest hit, and at the time, the greatest hits album came out, and I had that the day before it was released in the States, because an import shop got it in a day early, so I had it. And at the time, I was like, well, you've just had Decade of Decadence. Why am I buying this? I knew there was two new songs on it, so I was going to buy it anyway. But I remember taking that greatest hits disc home and putting it on my stereo, and I had the 1989 CD of Dr. Feelgood in the stereo, and I had it all at the same volume, and the greatest hits album was like way louder and way clearer, and I'm like, when these remasters come out, I will never listen to these original
Pressings. Yeah.
things ever again.
Yeah.
And I never have, because they sounded so fabulous. It was just like, yep.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Well,
you said 99 was when the first box set came out?
No.
No, the hits. The greatest hits.
No, I heard that part, but like you said something about the Crucial Crew, but wasn't this? Hold on. Wasn't this the first box set?
That is, the Crucial Crew was the series.
Music to Crash a Car to, or whatever.
Yeah.
That didn't come out till 2003.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because I know they never finished it.
No, they were going to do part 3.
When you peel that off,
yeah.
They did 1, 2. There was supposed to be a third. They never,
never
did.
Yep. That's too bad.
Was it lack of sales, or what was the reason for that?
I don't know. Def Leppard haven't. I know. I'm getting really nerdy, guys. I'm sorry.
No,
it's good.
This show's
That's what we're here for.
Yeah,
that's why we brought you on.
I
know the details.
Def Leppard has a piece that's missing too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What happened? Initially, when they got off Elektra and they got their masters back from Elektra, because Nicky Six is a smart guy. Say what you want about the guy, but he's a smart guy, and he was he called out the president of their record company out in the press, and also Alan Kovac, who has managed the band since 1995, is a very, 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 very smart guy. And they got their masters back, and initially they were being distributed. Ironically, they sold their catalog in 2022 to BMG, but
Right.
initially they were on Beyond Music, which was
Right.
Alan Kovac's record label, being distributed by BMG, right? So they released all the Crucial Crew reissues and stuff, and then Beyond Music went belly up. And so what happened in 2002, 2003, around there, they licensed their catalog to a label called Hippo Records, which was a label for Universal, right? So they had to get all their catalog back into the bloodstream of the industry again. So they reissued all the catalog again with the Japanese bonus tracks on them this time to Hippo Music, which was Universal, and that was when we got the Loud as Fuck box set. We got Music to Crash Your Car 2 Volume 1 and Volume 2, and we got it all got reissued again. It's just about, because they were in control of their catalog, and you've got to keep your catalog out there.
Yep.
So that's what they did, and they've been doing that on different labels up until they sold their catalog to BMG in 2022 for between 90 million and 150 million, somewhere like that.
Right.
So yeah.
All right. Well,
And
So
it was
is that
very-
around the time? Is that around the time when Mick decided to go to Tennessee and be like, later,
yeah,
give me my money,
Yeah.
boys?
Well, you
Which I don't
see-
blame him. If you think of all the pain the guy's in, walking around doing all, regardless of how he feels about the band, at his
Yeah.
age, with his health conditions, if you handed me even just 10 or 20 million of those dollars, I'd be like, all right, boys, have a good one. I'm going to
Well, I
Tennessee
mean,
to buy my house and live on the hill.
I mean, this is
Right.
you guys read what I said to you about the Mick Mars stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's stuff there. People just, it really annoys me because people go, and all of this stuff that I gave you guys is all out there, right? People don't, they go, I'm Team Mick, or I'm Team John 5,
Right.
Nicky 6-8, Mick Mars, all that crap. It's all that rubbish, It's just, I won't go into it now if you don't want me to, but it annoys me because it's not true, and there are factual reasons why it's not true. I'm not just saying, oh, it's not true because I don't want,
Right.
people to be picking out Motley Crue. That's not what this is about. If they were being idiots and it was proven, I'd go, well, they're idiots.
Right.
They should have never done that to me, but that's not what happened. It's not
Right.
what happened.
My
And
only
just
beef
for
with
the people that are unaware, to kind of do the Reader's Digest version of that, Mick was paid when he left. It wasn't that they fucked him over. He was paid
Right.
pretty well.
He was right.
well, at that point, was he not the only? Isn't at that point though? Isn't he and Nikki the only two actual owners of what was Motley Crue? Isn't Tommy and Vince under contract to perform? only?
yeah, they're contract, they're paid employees, right? But
Yeah.
what basically happened was in 2009, all of the four members of the band, all of them, they all signed an agreement, and this is in the court documents. They all signed an agreement that said if any of them left the band, decided not to tour, they wouldn't be entitled to touring revenue anymore, right? They all signed that. Secondly, like I've just said, Motley Crue sold and they did this because they're older, right? They're 65, 70 years old. It's very, very different to what happened to the Beatles when the Beatles had all their music and their publishing taken away from them, right? Motley Crue decided to sell their catalog to BMG. They sold their catalog to BMG. All four members of the band all benefited from the sale of that music, right? They all shared in it. All four members of Motley Crue have now sold their publishing as well. And there's a difference. There's recording, there's owning your master recordings and there's owning your songs, right? So they all sold. Nicky Six sold his songs, whatever. They all sold, and so all of the four members of the band benefited from the sales of that music. So Mick Mars he can't tour because he's too frail to tour, right?
Right.
So in spite of the fact that the band didn't owe Mick anything contractually if he bowed out of touring, right? They said, okay, Mick, you want to bow out of touring. We're going to give you $7.8 million, right? $7.8 million. And, we love you. Have a nice lot. That's great, And so, but what's happened is Mick's representatives have gone, they can't do this. You're a founding member of Motley Crue, yada, yada, yada. And so the band is being sued. And Alan Kovac came out and said, well, there's no publishing left. There's no copyrights in the recording left because they're all sold. The only thing that's left is touring, which Mick's not entitled to. But in spite of the fact that he's not entitled to anything, we still offered him $7.8 million to do nothing. And it's all being painted like the band are the bad guys.
Yeah.
I've got a problem.
Okay. Let me give a counterpoint.
Yeah, please.
My issue with them wasn't so much in that stuff because I'm neither a lawyer nor do I have the contracts. I don't know what Nicky signed or Mick signed or Vince signed or Tommy signed or when they signed it. What I do know is someone, either Nicky or Alan Kovac, wouldn't let John Corabi sing a couple songs on fucking Mick's solo album and put the kibosh on that. And that's where I said, that's horseshit. Why can't Mick just play a couple songs with John Corabi? They don't want nothing to do with Corabi. They ignore his album. They ignore him. So why would they then feel threatened if he has a song or two with Corabi on a solo album, which we all know is going to sell nothing like Crue? He's not going to do, there's no threat there. So that's where I thought it got petty. They're being petty. There's someone in that camp is being petty. And whether that's Nicky or Alan or whoever, I don't think it's Vince, because what I know of Vince, he doesn't give a shit. He just wants his paycheck. He doesn't want to talk to any of these dudes. He doesn't really want to see any of these dudes. He wants his paycheck to sing and get off the stage, and that's it. So I don't think Tommy has a say. So that pretty much points it down to who? Nicky or Alan? Now, if you're a true fan, TJ, wouldn't you want to hear some Corabi and Mick? What would be bad about that? So
Absolutely.
someone somewhere made it petty to me and started playing. And to me, from the interview I saw Mick, he said, that's when I started to feel like, okay, I left and now you're still trying to stick it to me. That's bullshit. So
did Mick actually say that?
Yeah, there was I'll find the interview for you. He said very clearly when he got cease and desists for trying to work with Corabi, he was wondering why.
Yeah, if that's true, that sucks.
Yeah, well, it's not, and I didn't just hear it from Mick. I heard it from Corabi.
No.
There's an interview with Corabi where he says that's who put the kibosh on it, Nicky. He actually says it, Nicky. So there you go. I mean, do you need to hear it from anyone else? I mean,
No,
is Crab going to come out and lie about that? Does Crab ever lie
No.
to us about any of the shit that was going on with them? So
Well,
that's, as a fan, that's where I thought, now you're hindering us from having two cool things. We could have had Crew live with John Five doing something new, something different, and we could have had Mick and Crab doing something else over here. And as a fan, I thought that would have been cool music all the way around. And instead, I kind of felt like Mick can't do what he wants to do, so now he's stuck working with other people that he didn't really. I mean, again, if you watch the sessions, because this was years ago, he was originally writing some songs with Crosby, and those never came out. And
that sucks.
Mick never said Nicky. He just said he received cease and desist that prevented him from going forward with that. That's what he said in the interview. Now, Crosby said in another interview it was Nicky that stopped him from playing with Mick.
Well, that's horrendous.
Yeah, so that was my only beef, regardless of the contracts and the money.
No, I agree.
Again,
I agree.
and some of that is public, and and you're the kind of person that would read it. That's why I wanted you on the show. I'm not going to take the time to read all. They've sued each other so many times. I'm not going to sit through all those court documents. Yeah. But for the most part, I try to be overall an even Crew fan. I like all the guys, but I can say, we're getting around to what we're going to do here today. In listening to these two albums, I realized something very important to me, and what's very important to me in Motley Crue music is Mick's riffs. I don't know who's writing them, if that's Nicky writing those riffs or Mick writing some of those riffs. But
it's
some
a DJ Ashba.
Over... Well, I don't think on Dr. Feelgood DJ was. I think DJ was sucking on a bottle somewhere while Mick was playing on Feelgood. But some of the riffs on Feelgood, to me, some of those songs to me are very. And the '94 album, I mean, some of those riffs are like, damn, Mick was chugging out some shit.
I'm with you.
I'm gonna, Tim. I'm gonna email you a link to all the interviews I've done with Karabi. All but one have been transcribed, but it's really cool stuff. There's probably a good 5 or 6 in there. But yeah, I think the one thing I'll say about the Mick Karabi collaboration, the music would have been much different. I did buy the Mick album, and I'm just kind of like, unremarkable.
I didn't love the Mick album either.
Not very good.
It needed Karabi vocally and lyrically, I think, and hook wise, melody.
Well, it was kind of soulless, I thought.
Yeah, it sounded robotic.
Yeah, it was like almost there.
Yeah.
That was a shame. I bought it digitally. I bought the vinyl, and I bought the CD. So I will support Mick or any of these guys.
And I'm kind of with you too, though. There, Tim, because I don't get the whole Roth Hagar camp. You know what I mean? Like, there's like,
I love
to me, it's two different bands, kind of like it was two different bands when Karabi came on board. I mean, it was Motley, but it was different.
I love all Van Halen, all of it. And he was
I could say the same thing. Yeah, for sure. I don't know how I feel about the Sharon record, but even that, like with Swine, I think there's 2-3 good songs on there. So, I mean, I can find some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
A good band can make a good song on an album. If they can't, then they shouldn't be making the album at all, right?
Right.
But yeah. So let's get down to this brass tacks here, boys. We have 2 classic albums here, in my opinion. I said to you guys in the private little chat conference that these are like both in my top 5, no matter which way I cut it. I'm having a hard time ranking 1 through 5. It's very, but yeah, the 94 album is definitely in my top 5 Crew albums of all time. So,
well, I'll just state for the record that the 94 Motley Crue album is the greatest album I've ever heard in my entire life.
Ooh.
Even better than Swine.
That record for me kills everything by everybody.
Okay. Well, there you go. So we know where you're going to lean. Well, why don't you start it off then? Tell us why. Tell us hit the songs.
But the thing is, they're both of these records are 10s to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, this is where I'm a bit concerned for your discussion, because I'm not. When it comes to this band, I freely admit I'm not able to be objective.
Okay. Well,
like choosing a child, isn't it?
It's like you're stuck, and you have Pamela Anderson on one side and Heather Locklear on the other, and you don't know which way to go. You're stuck between 2 10s for different reasons, for the way they are. Yeah. Well, I'll jump right in. I'm
All
not
right.
shy about
Go
this.
for
So
it.
I went through both albums and I listened to everything and I really put down to me the ones that I'm going to go back to and I play again and again. My issue with the 94 album, which was surprising to me, kind of like when we did the Rat albums and I was surprised at my reaction to Infestation. In my mind, the 90
Invitation. You got to say it right.
invitation.
Invitation. Oh.
It was in my mind the 94 album was almost impeccable back then. But now that I put it back on, I have a couple songs there, TJ, that I just some of those acoustic ones, man, just
Fair
I
enough.
don't I just don't need it, man. I just stick to the electric guitar with Mick. I don't need the acoustic stuff. So to me, when I broke it down, there's five major songs that I just keep going back to on that album. Power to the Music, Uncle Jack, obviously Hooligans. It was the one I first ever heard from the album. Until Death and Smoke the Sky is my favorite song on the whole album. Um, there is a couple others there that are like borderline, and I'm gonna debate that how that kind of goes with some of the borderline songs for me on Feel Good because there is a couple there that I'm like, uh, so it. But I guess what I'm saying is the problem with the '94, it's almost too long. It's 15 songs for a Motley Crue album, which generally Crue gave you 9 to 11 songs.
Well, that's with
You
the
know,
bonus shit, though.
yeah, for sure. But either way, there's two, I think, bonus tracks on there.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
point is, I almost felt like they almost could have, if they probably had been a little more patient, they could have held a couple of these songs, made a second album with Karabi, and I probably would have been stoked to have two albums. But
Mhm.
the point is, going back to Feel Good, well, obviously we have the hits, but Evil's not exactly so big on Without You. I'll kind of, that's like, I could give or take that song altogether. But I Feel Good, Slice, Kickstart, SOS. I really like the riff on Sticky Sweet. Sticky Sweet, the riff is underrated. That's total Mick Mars. It's so badass. And Don't Go Away Mad. So it's really, for me, when I get down to it, it's like 5 on one, 7 on the other. So it's like, there's 2 on the 94 album, which I probably could make this a 7 versus 7. But in the end, I'm going Feel Good just because of a couple of major reasons. One, I feel like that was the first album for me where the production really changed. On Girls, 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 and everything before, it kind of had this different sound. And when this one came out, it was just the production. Bob Rock made it so in your face. The drums are so big and so heavy. And although that is all present again on 94 because of the same production, I guess I felt like it wasn't as blistering and in my face. It didn't kick me in the nuts quite so hard. This is the first time I felt on Feel Good where the band was like just firing on all cylinders. So for me, I'm going Feel Good. It's by a song or two because of the total number of tracks on there that I just can't stop spinning. But you're basically looking at my number one and number two. It's like we said, it's like choosing between Britley Furlan or whatever and Pam Anderson in their prime. I don't know. One's a brunette and one's a blonde, but they're both banging. You're kind of forcing me to choose something here, and I'm just gonna go Feel Good. I'm going with my Pam Anderson. I'm going
Ooh.
with Feel Good.
Well, I'm um I'm definitely going MC94.
94.
I think it's an absolute crime that that record didn't get heard like it should have. But I will admit that I don't think the band helped themselves. Right? Have you guys read John Corabi's book? Have you read the book?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I've got the book, obviously, and I was listening to the audio book. I've got the audio book as well.
That's what I listen to. Yeah.
And no, actually, it wasn't in the audio book. I was doing because I listened to both of these albums again, just because I don't actually listen to Motley Crue all the time. I can go through periods of like 6 months, or because those songs are so ingrained in me that I can go for a period of 6 months and not listen to them, right? And then I'll just binge and go nuts. But I was listening to a John Corabi interview that he was doing when he released his last single, and he said that when their record got released, he said Elektra Bob Krasnow was the president of Elektra at the time, and Bob Krasnow had given huge deals, like Motley Crue got a $30 million deal, Anthrax got a huge deal at the time with John Bush. Um, there were another couple of bands, I can't remember who they were, but this guy spent a ton of company money on these four bands. And three of the bands didn't do what the label expected them to do. And John Corabi said that Bob Krasnow was told, if this Motley Crue album comes out and doesn't debut at number one, like, because it was Weir. They used to call themselves, they're like a conglomerate of all these companies, right? And Weir stood for Warner Music, Atlantic Records, and Elektra. They were all under the same umbrella, right? And the guys at Time Warner, the big Time Warner company that was, they said, if this Motley album doesn't come out and doesn't debut at number one, you're fired.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So apparently, and the record came out and debuted at number 7, which was a good good debut. But so Bob Krasnow got fired just as that record was coming out. 63 people at Elektra, according to John, all lost their jobs. Right? So it was like the band had no people at their label backing them. Nobody. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, Hooligans Holiday, like John Corabi said, we went over to Europe. We did some promotional stuff over in Europe. Everybody loved the record in Europe. We were getting a ton of press. Everybody loved the record. It was being really, really well received. And then they came back here and they started the tour. The album was struggling. And then they went on MTV. Have you guys seen that MTV?
From Europe?
No. Well, they were on MTV in Europe,
Right.
but they did an interview with MTV in the States. Have you guys seen this?
I probably have it in the compilation of all the shit that I've gathered over the years.
It's the interview where they're being asked about, it was an MTV news interview, and they're being asked about Vince Neil and how all their videos in the past were about fire, girls, and something else, right? And so Nikki Sixx gets ticked off at this line of questioning. He doesn't like it. And he basically said, who wrote these questions, blah, blah, blah. And he walked off.
Mhm.
Right? So their record company was in the toilet. They alienated MTV, which is not a good idea.
Right.
Right? And John was like, MTV were the only people that were supporting us.
Right.
So it's crazy.
Well, and they, I think, so to many of us, when they broke up, it was very surprising to me when Vince dropped "You're Invited, but your friend can't come." And even though I don't like the song now, at the time, being a kid, I remember thinking, wow, look at Vince. He's got the guy from Billy Idol, and he's got this, and he's got that, and he's like, he doesn't need crew in my mind, just 14 years old.
Well, I mean,
going on. He's doing his thing.
Well,
is crew going to be able to survive?
He was
on a
opening.
movie
I
soundtrack,
saw him.
too.
I saw him opening up for Van Halen on for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. I mean, fucking firing on all cylinders then too. I mean, it was like wanted to stick it to the Motley the Motley
Yeah, there
Crue
was
guys.
just a brief
Technically-
moment there where it seemed like
Technically, it
he
was
was the
live
one
right
that
here,
was.
right now. But anyway,
What was that?
What was that?
technically, it was live right here, right now. That he
All
was
that,
in.
yeah, technically,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
See, he,
yeah, yes.
there. I stand corrected, but
No,
no,
no, no,
but that
no,
was,
no,
but that
but,
was, it was a great tour.
Yep.
I mean, I think you
Just
pair those
time-wise,
guys up. Yeah, that was awesome.
But there was just that brief moment where people thought, "Hey, is Vince going to be the one that's going to, strike out on his own and be the big star? And what's going to happen to Crew?" And I actually, when I heard the '94 album, thought, "Oh no, Crew made like an album. Vince did a song to me. Crew did an album."
But I think
So-
that Vince album was pretty good. I mean,
Yeah,
that was pretty good.
for actually his best solo. I mean,
Sure.
compared to the other solo
Right.
songs or albums he's
Right.
released, have not been so.
I actually think Tattoos and Tequila is a really good record.
That's got good
It's-
stuff on there.
You know,
I mean,
it's
it's
not
all
bad.
mainly covers.
it's covers, but there's some good ones.
really
on there.
good record.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah,
good
people
ones on
knocked
there.
it because it didn't have as much original material as but Vince isn't a songwriter. Vince has to stick in his
I like-
wheelhouse. So.
I don't really like. I don't like it really.
Yeah.
But I was a first day buyer for all that stuff. Like,
Mhm.
You're invited, but your friend can't
And
come. Aboard.
if you listen to
Right.
the Encino Man soundtrack version, it's
just
way
saying, yeah.
different than that. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
because I have the
different, yeah.
CD single of that promo
It is
versus the
yeah.
one that made it on the record. I mean, it lacks that stupid fucking zapper guitar effect on
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
So,
But-
and it's actually the damn Yankees with Vince on that recording.
Vince, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the band. Yeah.
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 Nice.
Do you guys think? And it's funny with these Crew records, and it's always been the same for me, and it's been the same since the it's been exactly the same since the Hooligans Holiday single. So I was hanging out for that something to come out. I scoured the rock magazines for 2.5 years, and it was 2.5 years. There was Decade of Decadence, and then there was a few photos and clippings and stuff, but it was basically radio silence from them. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was radio silence from them for almost 2 years. Right? Do you guys remember? Like they
Yeah.
would,
Oh,
they
yeah.
were,
Right.
they weren't doing interviews. They were doing nothing.
Right.
There was 2 years where I only got to play my Decade of Decadence VHS tape, waiting to see what
Yeah.
this band's gonna do. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah. And so Hooligans Holiday came out, and I remember that Christmas of 1993. My brother went over to and it was still radio silence pretty much, but it was Christmas 1993, and I was like, my brother was going over to the UK for a holiday, and I said, please just bring me back a rock magazine that gives me the release date of the Motley Crue album. That's all I want for Christmas, right? And he brought me back this copy of Raw magazine. Had a little thing in it. Motley Crue's self-titled album, March 14th. That was it. I was like, that made I was happy. And so the single, and Kerrang starts doing articles on them and stuff for the lead up for the single and album stuff. And so they release this single. I rush off to Impact Records in Canberra and go, give me this single, right? And it had Hypnotized on the B-side, which ended up being the Japanese bonus track. But I was like, just, and I had to listen to it right there in the store. I had the CD, but I said, please play this. And I put the headphones on and I listened and I went, I hate this. And every single Motley Crue record that's ever been released, my first reaction is always that. Because it's always so different from what they've just previously done. So I'm like, I can't, I hate this. Anyway, I took it home and I listened to it a couple more times and I was like, no, this is a masterpiece,
Mm,
right?
right.
But I still think, do you guys think Hooligan's Holiday was the wrong single?
Mm, mm. Uh,
Yeah, I
I
kind
don't
of
know.
do.
I don't
Yeah.
think anything would have done well. Well, I thought it was a good pick. Let me look and see. Let me look.
I think if they'd gone with something like Power to the Music or
It's Power to the
Yeah,
Music or Smoke the
Poison
Sky
Apple,
to me.
Smoke the
Smoke the Sky
Sky.
is not as catchy, but it's the
Right.
riffage, man, is for
Yeah.
us crew heads. Yeah.
and it kind of sounded a bit like Pantera a little bit,
Hmm.
Smoke the Sky.
Yeah,
Huh.
the
With that,
detune.
The
had
yeah
that
the yeah.
heaviness about it. And anyway, but are we going to go track by track? I'm sorry, I'm getting off track
You
here.
could do it however you want. I mean, everybody kind of does it differently, but however you want to compare the two and tell us what your favorites from both and why. And
Well,
I
I
mean,
just
you kind
think,
of give us.
and it was funny. I was like, and the thing about Feel Good was, because what happened to me, keeping in mind, right? I was in 1987. I was 14 years old, right? So keeping in mind that I'm 14 years old, and like a few years before that, I saw pictures of my brother had, pop magazines, and they'd have pictures of Motley Crue. My brother was into Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, who I think are great artists, but I didn't I didn't understand them at the time. But um, he bought these, and I looked at this band Motley Crue, and I thought that's evil, right? Because I'm a 10-year-old kid looking at this going, these guys are evil, right? Of course, then you realize later on that Shout at the Devil is actually an anti-evil song if you listen to
Right.
the lyrics, right? But but so then in 1985, I'm watching Countdown, which was a big Australian music show here. Huge. Molly Meldrum, if you don't know who that guy is, look him up.
Right.
He was an absolute icon, not just in Australia, but the world of music. The guy's an icon. And they played the Smoking in the Boys Room video. And I liked it. I thought that's a cool thing. I had no idea that it was a cover. No idea. So it was like I liked that song and I kept hearing it. It was on a compilation album that came out here, and I thought that's a really good song. So it was before Girls, Girls, Girls came out. I bought the Theatre of Pain vinyl, and I liked it. I thought it was cool. Then Girls, Girls, Girls came out. I bought the cassette, and I liked it. I thought it was cool, but they weren't my favorite band or anything. But then Feelgood came out, and I bought that the first day it came out, and I just could not believe the sound of this record. I was like, listen to those drums. Oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then I saw the tour, and after that, that was it, you know. But with the 94 record, I was like, can they make a bigger drum sound than on Feel Good? I bet that there's no way that the drums could sound bigger than that.
Right.
And of course, the 94 album came out and the drums were monstrous on it. And I'm like, these drums were even heavier than on the last record.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
do you think that?
I think. Well, I was just replacing the speakers on my Jeep this week, and that's the album I used to kind of dial in the uh, the sound. It's either uh, 94 or Mind Crime or the Metallica Black record. I think those are the three. That you'll know if you have a decent sound system in your rig.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can crank those up and they shake the fucking thing.
I think Bob, for me, I think Bob Rock's the greatest rock producer that's ever lived.
All right.
It's just,
Yeah.
you know, I've got sampled drums that I use on my records. Like there's this program called Superior Drummer, right? And I bought that whole program because I'd been wanting those drums for decades. I was like, I want that drum sound. And then I saw a post on Nicky Six's Facebook. He goes, I love these new Bob Rock drums.
Raise your horn!